We are live. Welcome to episode 9 of the Batcat podcast. My name is Hops. To whatever that side is Squid on the base. Down there is
What's up,
Maple
guys?
Syrup. And our special guest today is a dude by the name of Statious. How are you doing, my man?
Doing all right. Got
Would
out of
you-
scrims, doing good.
Good. Would you go ahead and give yourself a quick little introduction and rundown of who you are?
Sure, yeah. I'm Statious. I've been doing coaching in general, Overwatch or otherwise, for most of my working life, and transitioned to Overwatch on release as a player at first. Moved over to coaching because I'm not a good player, and am trying to get it going there.
Very
That's most of us, right? Is we're not good at playing the games. We're finding other ways to be a part of the community.
Thought about it like that, but
The other thing that most people don't know about you is that you are, for someone who is in an analyst role and a coaching role, that you are fairly young, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
20.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, for a 20-year-old to be able to have that type of reach and that type of experience already in the game is something that's pretty unusual.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my first full-time job, I was like 13 or 12, something like that. So I've been working stuff for a long time. So I don't really think of myself in that way as young, although the number is pretty low.
Do you have any experience coaching other games before Overwatch, or like playing any games competitively, or has this been kind of your first foray into that role?
So coaching video games is my first game. This is my first game, Overwatch. But I've been playing games for a long time, competitively or otherwise. So TF2 and some battle royales, PUBG, Rainbow Six, some other stuff like that. Mostly FPS. And then I've taught everything from school subjects to sports, swimming, baseball, other stuff like that. Whatever I was interested in, I would always end up in some sort of teaching, tutoring, coaching role. So once I started playing Overwatch, I just kind of worked my way there.
Nice. You mentioned that you coached and taught like traditional, like quote unquote real life sports.
Mm-hmm.
What, just spitballing here, what do you think is the most translatable skill from going from a real life coaching position to a virtual coaching position?
It may be too broad, but I'd say giving feedback is very there's a certain formula to giving feedback in anything you do, anything you watch anybody else do, and like same thing in real life. If somebody asks you for advice, there's a certain perspective that you gain from doing all the coaching and etc. in real sports and otherwise, that all translates pretty well.
Very, very nice. So, right now, if we were to take a snapshot of the contenders scene as a whole, what do you think is going right for Tier 2? What do you think is going wrong? And what is the number one thing that you would change if you were given the keys?
Great question. Wow. That's a lot.
We're gonna be here for hours listening to Statious talk about the
Just-
answer to this
just-
question.
Buckle in, gamers. That is something that I think about a lot. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I am, no matter what I'm doing. I was just talking about this with my team last night. We were playing PUBG, and they were talking about. I was just basically describing to them that no matter what I'm doing, I'm always trying to learn, because I think, just as a kind of life philosophy thing, if you're not doing something to learn or something, or to improve, things like that, then things get stale pretty quickly, from my experience. So like even playing PUBG, I was like, and they'd be like, oh, crap, I died, I screwed XYZ up, that kind of thing. Not, that that gamer over there is trash, and this guy's trash, and I just got unlucky and it was lag and stuff like that. So maybe that's why I think about this kind of stuff a lot, but there's a long list in my head. I'm trying to narrow it down.
Yeah, just a couple quick hits.
Right. So the good, I'd say, I think there's been a lot more exposure, mostly organically, just from teams doing their thing over, almost over 3 years now since Overwatch been released. So Tier 2 is a lot more well known because, like, back in the day, Contenders Season 0, like 32 teams, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if if 1% of the current Overwatch viewer base knows what that is. So
Probably
stuff like that turning into now, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 viewers on NA Contenders. I think that's been going really well. I think Blizzard has learned a lot from 3 years of trying to cultivate, with minimal monetary investment, obviously, a sort of grassroots competitive scene. And then you see the contrast with that in Owl. So I think it's going well overall. So the bad, I would say, there's a lack of transparency in a lot of aspects of Tier 2. And the argument I saw on Twitter, I don't remember who was talking about this, but people were saying that there was a previous incident, I think it was in 2017, where there was like a large amount of information about an upcoming Contender season that was leaked. Like a significant amount of information. Enough to screw stuff up for Blizzard. So I think that kind of is being used as a excuse because of to cover up Blizzard's, or to rationalize Blizzard's opacity when it comes to Tier 2. But I think that's a self-defeating kind of downward spiral, because the less transparent you are, the more people are going to want to find stuff out for themselves, and the more people feel like they're put in positions where they have to leak information, things like that. So I think that's the biggest thing I'd say they could work on. If I were handed the keys to just Tier 2, I probably wouldn't be able to implement all the changes I'd want, but a few big things would be less downtime between Contender seasons, so make the seasons a little bit longer. And I think that will come naturally as more teams join, especially NA Contenders. And then the other big thing would be figuring out some sort of community edition based like prize pool increase. So there have been donations and stuff like that for previous Tier 3 tournaments, notably a few Jane TFCs, Elo Hell TFCs, and things like that. But I think finding a structured way to do that to support, especially the non-academy teams that are in Contenders, would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I feel like even the academy teams need some, I don't want to say support as well, but
definitely.
It seems pretty clear that they're not profitable either. I mean,
yeah,
they still have more resources that they're able to put into it, and it shows, for better or worse. But the Tier 2 scene as a whole definitely feels just underfunded.
Yeah, that's for a ton of reasons, though. Like, I'm not going to talk about actual numbers or whatever, but I can tell you that 99% of Contenders and academy players are not paid like, if they were to live on their own, it's not a sustainable wage, not even close. And there's only a few exceptions to that. Those would be like the farm teams, things like that, where they have a player on lock, like, I don't know any specifics or anything like that, but Alarm, yeah, exactly, Alarm on Fusion University, Who Are You, players like that these orgs don't want to let go for fear of having to play against them in the server one day, an Owl. Like, that's their biggest concern, is not that they want to make this player shine, it seems, is that they don't want to have to play against that player. So but Tier 2 is underfunded, but there's so many different reasons for that. I mean, when you pay, what was the rumor for Season 1 Owl, like 20 million, 25 million for a team, around there. And then Season 2, people were saying it was almost double sometimes, or more. Like, when you're putting that much into a team, there's a lot of investment that goes into building for the future. That's not an investment for one season of Owl. That's an investment for 5, 10, 15 years of Owl. So, these homesteads and all that stuff's coming out next year. Homestands, whatever it is. I always screwed that up. Like,
home
all
games.
That stuff. Home games, exactly. The home and away, the traveling structure, all the localization and stuff like that. That's all investment for the future of not just Overwatch, but esports in general. And I see academy teams in that same light. Whereas I think a few of the Overwatch League teams that have nixed their academy teams, namely, Florida and San Francisco, most recently, I think, are being a little short-sighted in that they had some very strong academy teams and good farm systems and stuff like that. And just because their rosters at that moment didn't mesh, Mayhem Academy, for example, um, had mostly Western players, and their roster was trying to be full Korean. So they used that as their main reason for dropping the academy slot, and all the players and staff associated with it. But 3, 4, 5 years down the line, that academy slot is going to be worth a lot more than it is now.
So do you think that the reason that we've seen a number of Overwatch League teams drop their contenders team for whatever, or their academy team for whatever reason, right? Do you think that is more a result of it just not being profitable, or they don't see it as like financially a smart decision, or is it just because like the team isn't working at a given time and they're just like, screw it, it's easier to just like drop this and not worry about it for now and try to build another one like a year or 2 years from now, for what, maybe we don't need to fill out a roster or whatever reason. I mean, San Francisco right now probably doesn't need all that many people in their pipeline right now, just based on how their team's been playing and what the meta is, right?
Right.
Florida, you can make arguments, but again, like you said, they're Western players. So, like, what's your read on that, or your take on that?
I think saying it's one or the other would be kind of unfair to the teams, to the management, because, like, I can say dropping their academy roster is short-sighted, and I do think that is short-sighted, but I think saying it's because it's not profitable, just because it's not profitable, like NRG, Misfits, these are big organizations, and the backers of these teams are huge. Like, there's some of the biggest companies in the world backing some of these teams. Cox, Comcast, things like that. These are gigantic companies, and so I wouldn't say that just because a team is in the red, just because an academy team is in the red, like Shock, they're one of the best teams in the league. They're consistently one of the most popular teams in the league. They're in a popular area. Like, their home games are going to do great. They have players for years to come. Like, they're not hurting in terms of money. But I don't think it'd be fair to say it's just because they weren't profitable, which they are not. But I also don't think there's any real one explanation. Another reason could be there's a lot more. It's not necessarily about profit at that point, but like there's a lot more work in terms of building the academy with a very low payoff. So I wouldn't necessarily call that like a profit issue, but maybe like a return on overall investment, if that makes sense. The amount of staff and personnel and stuff you need for an academy team, etc.
I wonder if the results that the Paris Academy had also scared some people a little bit, because that was pretty
possible.
yikes.
Yeah, Paris Academy is in open division. That is possible, but
Forgot about that.
yeah, I was happy to forget about that as well. I don't know. That's such a unique situation in terms of players and staff and Paris org and all the stuff that, I mean, they don't have bad players. Like I was looking at Paris Academy roster when they were doing badly in trials, and I was like, I don't want to pick up some of these players. Like, is that okay? Can we move them over to NA? Like, I don't know what the deal with that was. I think most of them have gotten shifted around now, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah, they're gonna have a fairly new roster.
yeah, I don't think that alone would be enough of a reason, but that certainly gave me a scare. Yeah.
I feel like Contenders 2 can be extremely difficult for academy teams, in the regard that like the seasons are so short that if you have something like, you can pick up 7 or 8 good players, right, and then just have something where like they don't gel well, or the meta doesn't really fit them well. And if you go down like 2 or 3 games in the beginning from that, then it can be so hard to actually come back. And whether it be through roster changes or whatever, it can be so hard to come back from that. And then like, it can be this whole thing that snowballs, and then you're in trials. And there are some decent teams in trials that can definitely contend with some of the lower academy teams.
Yeah.
It's just like this whole problem.
Yeah, I think trials. One of my players says this a lot when we were talking about the system in general. Trials is more of a sprint, and contenders is a marathon. And I think once you're already on that downward spiral, like you said, from contenders, like last minute, for example, my team, most recent contenders trial season in NA, we had one bad weekend. There were 3 weekends really. We did okay on first weekend. We lost 2-3 to Bermuda, and we rolled Luminance. So decent first weekend. It was close. We come into a second weekend, and we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday matches, banging them out. There's no time to really review those. You're focusing on the next one and fixing, if there's any gigantic mistakes, you're fixing those. So we lost all 3 of those, and then morale at that point is almost unsalvageable. So it can go down. It can go downhill fast, definitely.
So to change gears a little bit, a question from chat regarding Aspen and her goals for next year. It says, recently Aspen announced plans of making it on stage to OWL next season. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think she intends to throw herself at the Big 20, or do you think that she's going to have to follow the path to pro?
So for an Overwatch League team, I'd say the benefits of having Aspen as a player outside of her ability in-game are less than they would be for a tier 2 or 3 team, right? So having somebody like DeFran on your contenders team is a gigantic, or Harblue, for example. Harblue's the perfect example for this. For Chicken Contendies and Grunto, almost single-handedly did single-handedly boost viewership in a massive way.
Like double viewership.
Yeah,
honestly.
easily.
Actually, like double. Yeah, in a lot of situations, it was massive. So that's a huge benefit. But in Overwatch League, I'd say that's less so, just because of the money behind it. It's huge. Anyways, all that stuff. But I don't think aiming high is ever a bad idea. There just needs to be realistic understanding of of how stuff like that works. Like, nothing against Aspen or anything, but I don't think she's the best flex support player in the world. She's not, like, she's great.
Main support?
Yeah,
I
main.
thought she was a tank. Is she a support player? I've never really watched her.
Yeah, she's primarily... She's been a Mercy main for the last couple seasons, and then she's been switching to Ana BAP, and her Ana is actually pretty solid.
Honestly, I've only watched her twice, and she was playing Hog both times, so I guess that was like a fluke.
Yeah.
I guess that's just interesting, that tweet, because like I didn't watch the video myself, but a lot of people interpreted that she was like planning on going straight to OWL, and they like crapped on her for it.
It was cut weird.
It was cut really strangely. I saw like part of it. It was a weird video.
Yeah, there's a cut in the middle. It probably just ran on too long talking about it, but I don't think that it's ever a bad idea to say, I'm going to be an OWL next year. I think because she's a streamer and because she's popular and personality, that people assumed she meant I'm going to be an OWL next year because I'm a streamer or because I'm a personality. When in reality, she's saying I'm going to work my hardest to deserve to get into OWL and then to make it into OWL for next season, which I think is admirable. I think she's been working on this for a while, from what I remember, behind the scenes. So it's good to see that it's finally happening for her. And I know Fran as well has been playing on some teams lately. So she's also pursuing that, which I think is great. I just think there's so many other insane support players in Overwatch League that in tier 2 that it's a really hard road, but I think they can do it. I think anybody can do it. So.
It's cool that she has aspirations, but also I think at the same time, like, there's quite a some people who are really talented in tier 2 are still struggling to make it to the big leagues, and they're certainly more talented than she is. Just like, not trying to throw shade at her, but
well, right. I mean, the environment's completely different. Some of the best some of the best streamers in Overwatch. I mean, XQC is a great player and all, but he really struggled warming back up into the game. Like he had, I think he had two or three streams or something like that. You have the tryouts, and they announced the roster today, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they did.
Okay. They announced the 7-man too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did.
They have the 7 and the 12 in the same
All right,
tweet.
My timeline's just making sure.
Yeah, the 7 is the exact same as last year.
Right. So XQC Note, Bonnie Crimzo, Agilities, Mangachu.
Yep.
Who am I forgetting?
Short 4.
Sure for.
Sure Daddy. How could you forget Sure Daddy?
I'm sorry, I forgot to sue me. My bad. Speaking of Sure for, man, his Widow. Holy crap.
Yeah, that actually leads.
It's juicy.
That actually leads into the next, literally nice segue into what I was going to bring up next.
Wow, look at that.
As a coach, how are you feeling about how the 222 is rolling out in both your practices, your scrims, and then also what we saw in Overwatch League this last week?
I'm totally happy to take an L. 100% of the time. If I say something and I'm wrong, I will admit that I'm wrong. And I will admit that I was wrong in expecting more of a short-term detriment to the game. I expected it to be a lot more. I expected the waters to be a lot rougher for the first few months of it, but I think Blizzard having it come out in stage 4 definitely gave them enough time to kind of get things moving behind the scenes, and it's turned out really well. I think a big benefit of it has been the overall community taking it in stride. It really could have gone two ways. It could have gone the way of, this is such a massive change, this will kill the game, the game dead, lol, all that stuff. And then, but the way it went was, like, the average player was super psyched about it, which I thought was the biggest reason it's gone so well. In terms of Tier 2, Tier 3, I think it's a very abrupt change for a lot of players and staff that weren't expecting it or didn't put thought into it before. I think if you prepared for it as a Tier 2, Contenders Academy team, I think if you prepared for it, I think you'll be in a great spot in playoffs. And I think if you didn't, I think you will crash and burn in the first round. It will be a very rude awakening for some NA Contenders teams that are, in anywhere in the standings, but it's, I think they just don't realize how much it's going to restrict play, because like even today earlier, I caught a bit of Contenders, and they're playing more 2-2-2 and they're getting used to it and they're playing it in scrims. Yeah, I know, but I think Tier 2 is where it's going to be the hardest, but OWL and Tier 3 has gone great from my perspective.
So I know that OWL players and OWL organizations were informed right as the start of Stage 3 that this roll-lock in 222 was coming. Was there any official word to anybody in Contenders that you're aware of, or did you find out with the rest of the world?
So you're talking about like down from Blizzard, right?
Yes.
Well, I don't think so. In terms of, hey, this is coming to Contenders. But I do think at some point during Stage 3, they had I think the Academy teams, and some, I think most of Tier 2 orgs knew that it was coming to OWL around that beginning of Stage 3. But I don't think they knew it was coming to Contenders until either a week or so, or right when the tweet came out.
So I'm
My timelines are screwed up there. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear your take. So we talked about a little bit last week, and a lot of people have talked about how, they've 222 has been rolled out for Overwatch League for Stage 4. Yeah, there's a whole competitive integrity
that's a
conversation
gigantic
there,
can of worms we can have.
Of course, right? But I'm really curious to hear whether you think they should have rolled it out for Contenders playoffs or continued to play through roll-lock on an older patch, specifically for Contenders, because I feel like that for me personally, the jump from regular season to playoffs and making this change is much more significant than going from okay, stage 3 to stage 4, and like, yeah, there's some more significance in stage 4 because you have the play-in tournament at the end and everything, but it feels much more drastic for me.
I'd say it's definitely more drastic, but I think no matter which way, no matter how Blizzard organized this, it was going to be harder on tier 2. I think no matter what they did, it was going to be harder on tier 2. I think it was super simple for tier 3 relatively, because there's no open division right now. There's no long form high price pool tournaments right now. There were some, there was the GameStop tourney and some Horizon Cups, not for normies. There's a lot of individual tier 3 tournaments like that. Most of those aren't even Blizzard run, but I think tier 2 is going to get hit the hardest just because they're kind of sandwiched in the middle, and it's always difficult to structure stuff to where all 3 tiers are equally taken care of, or all well taken care of. But I would say that I think playoffs is the best way to do it for contenders. I think if you wait longer than playoffs, you screw everything up, because these teams are trying to go for gauntlet and stuff like that, and that throws a wrench into the whole goal for Blizzard for 2019 for tier 2. I think if you did it earlier than playoffs, like if you maybe did it at the beginning of the contender season and announced it way earlier, and then, hey, this is coming, stage 4 Owl, here's a sneak peek, and watch contenders to see how it is. I think that could have been a great opportunity for exposure for tier 2, but I don't think Blizzard was ready on the game development side to pursue something like that on the professional client that they play on for contenders. So I think they found a good middle ground, but at the same time, I have a problem with the 222 lock being on patch 1.38. We can talk about that later if you guys want.
Yeah. I think, wait, so is that confirmed for Contenders playoffs as well, that it'll be on 1.38?
Yep. Yeah, that was announced.
Which one's 1.38?
1.38 is the current owl patch.
It's the live one only.
Current live,
so it's
on everything.
It's gonna have a roll lock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
It's the live patch right now. If you go open Overwatch, it'll be on 1.38, but you won't have roll lock.
Right.
So the Monty was one of the biggest people, one of the most well-known people talking about roll lock before it came out, in the proposing roll lock, talking about stuff here and there, and obviously he knew about it while he was doing that, so you have to be careful. But he mentioned a lot how he wanted a balance patch with the roll lock, and how a balance patch, most heroes would have to be tuned and all that stuff. And now we're in an unfortunate situation for every tier, for Owl Contenders, tier 3, everything, that we are not playing on the patch that was intended to be for roll lock. And I think the amount of bunker you've seen in Owl tier 2 and everything, the amount of like bunker versus dive matchups, or dive versus dive, bunker versus bunker, how it seems to be there's not really that circle of counters anymore that there used to be. Even before GOATs, you have some 2-2-2 stuff with Ryan Zarya. A lot of that has been lost because when you take out GOATs in a environment where GOATs is so strong, the counters to GOATs also weaken. Like triple DPS and stuff like that, in my opinion, becomes a lot less like, the comp that Shanghai was running all throughout Stage 2 playoffs. So the Merciana, Pharah, triple DPS gets hurt a lot by that lock, because not only are you restricted in terms of mobility and certain synergies and stuff like that with Wrecking Ball, you're also greatly enabling comps that rely on 2-2-2, which are dive and bunker. So what have you seen in tier 2? Dive and bunker. I don't know. The balance patch for me really is the only criticism I have of it. So I think overall it's been good, but that's definitely been frustrating for me.
I'm kind of curious if we're going to see this patch that's on PTR right now stay there for significantly longer than we normally see on PTR. We've already seen them kind of give us the Moira change and then go back on it. I'm honestly kind of expecting another Moira change to come that's hopefully a little bit more in the right direction. And we talked about last week, there are definitely still some heroes that we're convinced need some little tunes, but at least it's definitely a step in the right direction right now.
Gotcha. What did you think needed? Was it like people screaming for Orisa nerfs, or
yeah,
just like the gist of it?
I don't know how Orisa is in PTR anymore. I don't know if she's like still OP or if the shield nerf by 1 second was like enough.
Not really. She's
I
still
don't
very
think it
strong.
was,
No, that only
especially
makes a
'cause
difference in that only will affect bunker mirrors.
Because they also
Okay.
Instead of that, it
added
won't change
Sigma, and it makes Orisa like even worse because they just like switch off their shields.
Yeah, I was gonna touch on Sigma here in a little bit. My biggest comment from last week in terms of hero balancing is I think they need to remove Symmetra from the game.
Yep.
They need to
Rework Symmetra again. That was the
rework.
conclusion we came.
Rework number 5. Got it.
Is it number 5? I thought it was number 4.
Yeah.
There's been 4 so far.
Yep, she's been
What,
reworked.
wait, original, the
Mhm.
new one
Yeah,
with
from
shield
closed
generator.
beta to now, there have been 4.
What was in? Was there a different?
She used to have an E where she would just literally give her teammates.
No,
shield.
I remember the shield one. And then there's one with the shield generator.
Yeah, and there was the
And
TP
then-
shield generator. Then there was it was closed beta. She gave shields, if I remember correctly. I could be
But
wrong.
It was also
Yeah.
through season 2 that she had that.
Really, she
Yeah.
had a shield on her E.
Yeah, it was the 25 shield, and then you
Huh.
gave it, and then you would completely forget why Symmetra existed.
Right. She would just AFK and play with
And
the
then
Ryan and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then
I
they
think they removed that and changed her orbs, and then it was TP, and then they added the shield gen, and then they reworked her again. And then now on PTR there's another rework.
Yeah, with the telly where people just put down their telly and use it as like a version 1 teleporter, only short
Yeah,
range.
it's permanent now. So I mean, I consider that a rework. So I guess we are on number 5.
Yeah, I guess it is a rework. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. They kind of went back to version.
Old TP, yeah, exactly.
God, I hate that.
The biggest
Like, I
problem
just
with
walk out and there's this stupid teleporter there.
the biggest issue with Symmetra is the fact that I don't think her turret should slow. That is the most uncomfortable, annoying mechanic. The turret's already do enough damage that if you're going through the car wash, you're still going to get hit quite a bit. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate the
Hard to
slowing on the
find
turrets.
Spoken like a true
I love you,
former
brother,
Reinhardt one trick.
but I think your competitive experience might be biasing your opinion a little bit.
I mean,
but who does it affect besides Diamond and below? Really? Let's be real here.
There are some nasty top 500 Symmetra one tricks. You
Yeah.
better be careful.
Hi, Steve-O.
LOL as if I'd ever
No,
reached
so
top
so so I think that the thing that we had talked about a little bit is that the ability to teleport basically your entire team instantaneously is really strong in theory, right? But she offers so little utility outside of that. I mean, basically zero utility, right? Outside of that, like she basically just exists to give teleporter and then is useless to her team the rest of the time. And like I don't know, she needs something else, but also something less frustrating to play against to be like truly useful on high tier play.
Did anybody notice how the shield she had on her E is now on Sigma? I just want to point that out.
yeah.
Oh, you
It's-
mean version 2's shield?
It's literally the
Uh-huh.
exact same. It's the
Yeah.
exact same mechanic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's.
Just thought I'd point that out. That rework
So-
number 3 Symmetra. That
so-
was one of the reworks as well. Was the flying
I
shield.
forgot about the flying shield.
There
It's like
was a
not-
time where
Mhm.
tier 3 teams were trying to use that with High Noon, and I swear to God, it was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
that came with the death tentacle. That was the worst time.
Yeah. I don't think Sim is ever going to be anything more than
A weird niche pick.
I don't even want to really call it niche. It's like how Chengdu kind of braved the goats tsunami as it were with their DPS and Ameng on ball, because originally Ameng wasn't supposed to be their main tank, if I remember correctly. He was supposed to be their backup for some niche stuff. I don't even remember who their original main tank was, but they stuck with it and pulled it out. I think there will be some teams. Sim confirmed prototype. Yeah, that's very accurate. 2 of her abilities are now on other characters.
Yeah.
I think Sim will be something that a few teams will It reminds me a lot of like Batiste, how Shock with Batiste, Rascal put, like 200 hours or something into that character while it was on PTR. I think it was something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah, he was grinding the crap out of that character because you only need a brain for Brig, and you don't really rust on that character very much. So he grinds Batiste, and they survive the little DPS 1 week DPS meta at the beginning of stage 2 with it. I think it'll be something like that, where you see a few teams get really good at it, pull off some wins with it, maybe some she stuff against lower skill teams, lower ranked teams, but I don't think it'll ever be a Mei or a Hanzo or a Hog or anything that's super strong right now. It'll never be that good on them.
Her kit's just like so inconsistent, and like it relies on
It's
like
feast or famine, just like old
her
Tor.
putting down things and then walking away and doing minimal amounts of damage.
Wait, so
like,
does this mean we're going to see Mangachu play in the Overwatch League at some point?
Yeah,
if it's
guaranteed.
like Tor.
Yeah, Mangachu gets like he gets to play those heroes as like a reward for doing something that the coaches want him to do. So he'll get to play Torb on a round if he does XYZ or changes XYZ or
this is
something.
broccoli.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I'm
you get to play Torb now. Get out there,
Exactly.
kid.
I'm
Yeah.
just
Literally
imagining.
on the jersey.
I'm just imagining a coach for Toronto Defiant being like, "Come on, Mangachu, if you go on Brig jail, we'll let you out so you can play fire later. Come on, boy. Who's your good Brig? Who's the good?" All right, that's enough of that.
No,
But-
it's all good. The Flex DPS players have been released from Brig jail and thrown into Mei or Hanzo jail. They're still on one character. It's
I
just
mean,
not Brig
to
anymore.
be fair, Mei and Hanzo are way more fun to play than Brig is.
Oh yeah, of course. Mei, you don't
I
even
am-
let the enemy team play the game.
The strongest Mei advocate of all time. Mei is my son, the son I never had, even though she's not a boy.
Statious, how do you feel
Trying to
about
figure that one out. Sorry.
how do you feel about all the Reaper that is being played now?
Oh God.
Okay, this is a good conversation. I like this. Reaper is a means to an end for Overwatch League teams. Reaper is like, we need a character that can fit into this last slot. We haven't figured out what to put here yet. We think Mei and Orisa and Hog are really good, but what's a character that can work with them? I think Reaper has some like survivability. Maybe he can protect us against dive. Let's try it. And Reaper turns out to not be terrible with Mei. I don't think that currently it's like process of elimination. They went down the list of all the DPS characters and they're like, McCree, not enough long range damage, not enough mobility. Soldier, not enough they just went down the list over and over and over, and they're like, well, I guess it's Hanzo and Reaper are left, so let's try these. He's just something to fill out the comps that people are playing now. I've never seen him be run successfully, at least, as the linchpin of a comp.
So do
What do
you
you mean
think
perfect
that he
carries?
is?
Note blossom.
Do you think that like he's being played because he's had too much power creep and needs to be nerfed back down a little bit, or just like because his kit has so many different aspects to it that are useful right now, and it's just kind of like more of a situational thing that he's being played?
Okay, so Reaper at launch. Go back, humor me, chat.
30 years
whoever.
ago.
Whoever wants to take on this experiment after the podcast is over, go watch 2016 Atlantic Showdown Overwatch tournament. It was the first huge tournament. It was before the World Cup, if I remember correctly. And I think, if I remember correctly, there was a lot of Beyblade. There's a lot of McCree. There's a lot of
love
Reaper. There's a lot of
Beyblade.
Genji.
I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss those days.
And
Boy.
the biggest thing you'll notice if you pay close attention to, especially the DPS players, is how much slower the pace of the game was. It was massively slower. Like Widow players would be staring at each other for 3 to 5 seconds before either of them took a shot. Grapples would be used on cooldown for hook shot, like just really weird stuff. People would use ults as they got them. Ultimate economy wasn't a concept. I think the first time I heard somebody say ult economy was like after the first World Cup, when Korea was like actually saving their nano instead of just using it on the Genji to farm blade. They're actually saving nano and stuff like that. Like Ryu Jae-hong with sleeps and cooldown usage, all that stuff.
Cooldown usage.
And Reaper
Economy.
back then, when teams are playing that much more slowly, Reaper had to do a lot more, just a lot more in general. But now that teams are moving so quickly, That's one of the reasons that they changed his what's it called, Shadow Step. They changed that like 5 times and buffed his lifesteal and all this stuff because his character just feels really slow, like a very slow paced character to me. And I think the momentum of the game, just the pace of the game, has kind of outdone him.
Speaking of momentum and pace, I would really like to see Nano Ryan with the speed boost back in the game.
With a
Oh,
Lucio
man.
speed
Old
boosting him,
Lucio
just
now,
running past and shattering.
old Lucio now would be played with. It would probably be Reaper May.
Can we go back to
Yeah.
like the original
Ryan Zarya,
roster?
Reaper May, Ana Lucio. Everybody would be playing that. And
Can
it
we
would
go
be,
back to the original roster and talk about what the optimal team was with knowing about alt economy and not being
Sure.
screwed with your abilities?
3 Winstons and 3 Lucios.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
no, but
They had it all figured out.
with hero limits. Shut up.
2-2-2 or 1 hero limit.
2-2-2. Let's just do 2-2-2.
Hmm.
Man, they may change Torb a lot too.
Yep.
Torb is beautiful now. Do you remember when May's Icicle had damage drop off for
Yeah.
some shit reason?
Are we talking about? Was Diva part of the initial roster?
Yes.
Yeah. She was one of the
Okay,
first.
but that was
First ad was Anna.
But that was before she had like 4 seconds of defense matrix, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I came in like season 3 or 4. I actually
Hers,
wasn't around
at that
when the
time,
game
hers was
started.
on a. You clicked it and it went all the way down. Like you hit right click.
Oh, that's right.
Went all the way down.
Mhm.
It wasn't a metered ability like it is now.
Mhm.
It would
Man, I
probably
forgot
be
about that.
probably be like
Probably
Widow-
Ryan Zarya.
Yeah, it'd probably be Reinzar, like Widow McCree. It would probably be like Reinzar,
Oh my
Widow
god,
McCree,
McCree for sure. They would.
Widow Cree, and then like I almost said Moira. Wow, I'm not well.
I don't know.
How
If
did
they'd
Lucio
run,
Zen?
I don't know if they'd run Widow like season 1 roster. She was pretty.
She was her charge time was lower back then, if I remember correctly.
Wasn't the hook longer though? Wasn't it like 10 seconds?
No, it was 6.
Yeah.
Was it really?
Then it was
They
8.
increased it?
Or no. It may have been
Was
8. Well, it was 8 and then 12 and then 10, but I don't remember if it was 6 before it was 8.
I forgot they increased it.
Oh, right. Yeah, body shot 150 damage.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. That would be
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So Zen is 150 health, Tracer's 150 health. Those are both dead.
Why Zen? Zen was crap.
Bye bye.
Come on. He's a shit character.
I don't know. It actually could be Winston Diva with that. That's a good
So
thought experiment.
the one thing I really want to hear from somebody in the coaching ranks of Tier 2, what was your initial thoughts of Sigma when it was announced versus after a week of playing it? How do you think he's going to actually fit in with potential comps, especially in the 2-2-2?
Do you find his toes attractive?
Do you find his toes attractive?
Top tier content.
I'll answer the more pressing question first. No, I don't find his toes attractive.
Is it because they're freakishly long?
Cut him from the streamers. Delete the VOD.
They are
Like-
they are a little long.
Like, he's like a
Little
little
long.
chimpanzee toes. Like, they just literally can snatch a banana and peel it open.
That's actually kind of true.
It is!
That's pretty perfect. I'm imagining him. I'm imagining like Tarzan from the old
Yep.
Disney movie with his
Pretty
feet.
Yep.
I mean, he's basically a shaved Sasquatch because he's 7 feet tall.
Is he actually?
Yeah,
He's
taller than
7'1".
Ryan.
Is he taller
Taller
in
than Ryan.
game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think my headcanon now is that Sigma is like Tarzan from another timeline.
Also,
that-
Peppa
They're
Pig
basically
is
the
like
same person.
7'1" or something.
Yeah, Peppa
Is
Peppa
that-
Pig is 7'2".
Peppa Pig is fucking huge.
Wow.
Wait,
Well,
who's
that
Peppa
his
Pig?
height actually bolsters the point I was going to make about the first question you asked, which was Sigma's viability. So, after every character comes out, every single time, since release, except for Ana because she was the first character to come out, nobody had any idea what to do with her. And support players only knew how to play Lucio Mercy, but main support was Mercy, I think, and off support was Lucio back then, if I remember correctly, something like that. Every time a hero gets released, oh my god, this is insane! Look at all these cool things we can do, and this niche strat, and look, we can do this, and oh my god, this character is insane, and 0% pick rate in Owl, 0% pick rate in tournaments, 0% pick rate in scrims, because the characters since release that have come out since release have become more and more situational, and are now almost feels like they're being released to counter each other. And so the original roster of characters, because they were so much more versatile, still sees a ton of playtime. Like right now, if you look at, so in Overwatch League, what popular characters were put what characters with a high pick rate came out after release besides Ana?
Orisa.
In current 222 FLM, not Brig.
Sombra.
Okay, Orisa, maybe Sombra. Anybody else?
I don't know.
No?
Wrecking Ball got some more time in the
Wrecking
end of
Ball.
Stage 3.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 222 though.
Oh.
I mean, I still think we're going to see a fair bit of Hammond, but
I think you'll see a fair bit of Hammond.
Without 222, you're looking at more, triple DPS with Ball to counter the Orisa. Like, Orisa comes out, and then a direct counter to Orisa comes out. What a coincidence! Like, Batiste, Hammond. No, not really. Not nearly as much as the original characters.
yeah, that's true.
They're
I
all
think that's
super
kind of like-
versatile. They were made. They were almost made like a closed ecosystem. It felt like the first 21 characters that came out, there wasn't much that wasn't there, in terms of utility. There were some holes in the tanks, in terms of different ideas, things like that. But overall, I think it was very well rounded, and they started like slotting in to fit. Oh, there's not really a high mobility, high health pool DPS, so let's add Doomfist. There's not a really good CC DPS, so let's add in Sombra, things like that. There's not a really good stationary tank, so let's add in Orisa. Feels like they're just patching holes. Like, oh, triple DPS is cool, but maybe we could add a more mobile tank. We need a more mobile main healer, so here comes Moira. They're just all like fitting these little holes, and there aren't that many holes left.
But
I don't know if it's such a function of filling in holes as much as they just want to like make heroes with different abilities. And the problem is heroes with different abilities, because like they're kind of just like jumping into the MOBA realm where they're like, oh, you're stunned, oh, you're trapped, oh, you're I don't know what hack would be. I don't remember what the MOBA.
Like a cancel, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
Silence.
Yeah, silence.
Yeah, silence. And like it's like they're going into MOBAs because they want to incorporate them, and the reason that a lot of games don't incorporate things like that is because all the abilities with the original roster are like good FPS abilities that like are versatile and fun, and everything else is kind of like secondary. And like they should have had those abilities secondary to the flexible heroes to begin with, instead of making new heroes, right?
I think part of it too is also just that, like, if you look at a lot of the heroes that were in initial Overwatch, right? Like at release, they're definitely all like unique heroes, but a lot of them tend to pull from a lot of like prior gaming, like I'll call them like gaming platitudes, right?
They're
Like
very
if you look
traditional.
if you look at
heroes.
Soldier 76, right? Like he is the prime example of like ultra traditional like FPS assault rifle character, right? And I think part of what it is also just that they're at a point now where they've exhausted a lot of the platitudes. And
They
need
did
to
like
come
head
up
somewhere.
with, yeah, but like they need to either come up with like more and more unique things, which is hard to do while still making them like fit into the game well, or the alternative now is start pulling from things like MOBAs as opposed to when they traditionally pulled from FPSs. But the problem is that a lot of the people that have played this game for a long time that came in from the FPS realm are like, I don't want roots and silences and all this other stuff in my game. Like, I just want to be able to dink people on the head with some fun counterplay, not like have to deal with release brig.
I mean, I think a plant-based root character would be kind of cool in Overwatch, but
I think it would too.
you can hate all you want, man. If you don't like stuns, that's where the game is going, dude. There's only that's kind of what I'm saying. I think we're on the same page, but I just said it differently. Like in terms of an FPS game, they filled out a lot of they rounded it out very well. But they just after release, they just added in a lot of stuns, CCs, more different concepts.
I think it's just like mostly for creativity and fun's sake, except for main tanks where they're like, huh, gotta add another main tank. Well, shit, gotta dive deep in the creativity barrel.
I will say though, I feel like main tank isn't as bad now in Rollock because you can't have like you will never have the game again where you are a Reinhardt up against a Doomfist, NMA, and McCree, and somebody name another DPS with CC and Sombra.
Hanzo, Brig,
Right.
Literally all the
Lucio.
CCs one team.
It's like
Yeah.
a 1v8 at this point, yeah.
And like, there's definitely still comps that you can get up against that have
Yeah.
a lot of CC, but they tend to be. There are less combinations that make it overbearing. I think.
Especially when they got rid of the slow stacking in the PTR patch.
Yeah.
That dealt with a fair amount of CC bullshit, which is nice. Especially May.
There's a lot of CC in the game. There's no getting
Yeah,
away from it now.
there's no getting away from that, but like a lot of the slowing mechanics, which is even worse than CC in the lower ranks, is
Yeah.
care of.
I think we will see. I'm not sure if it'll be by August 13th or if it'll be on the September 1st patch, but I will guess that we will see a nerf to May's freeze by then. Because her cleave on the freeze, when they added that, they didn't realize they opened that's like the most minor change that has the most major impact that I can think of. In terms of any character since
and
release.
It still makes sense. I think they would have to like change the amount of time between like when you can be frozen again, because it's pretty short right now. It's like half a second from when you're unfrozen to when you can be frozen again.
Well, when I get dove by like Lucio, Moira, Winston, Diva, Tracer, Sombra, and I hold left click and all 6 of them slow down, like that's kind of insane. I don't know. It's just
Well,
it's just so what's the word? It's so oppressive. It's like playing against Brig on release. It feels like there's
I
just
think
so much you can do.
I think we're just at a point right now where we're like rebounding a little bit from all the nerfs that they tried to introduce to deal with goats.
Right,
And
exactly.
now
I mean,
like,
that was a buff
okay,
to counter goats, right?
Yeah, or buffs to counter goats, excuse
Exactly.
me, right? So, and again, like talking about characters that we talked about last week that we feel like still need to be pulled back down to earth a little bit, like Reaper is another one of them, where his life steal is actually kind of
40%.
insane. I mean, he's still weak to CC, but it feels incredibly oppressive to play into.
Right.
And I think we'll have probably, it might take like the next month or two for all of them to come back down to earth, but there are a lot of characters like May, like Reaper, I think McCree as well, with the change that they made to his fire rate. You could even argue that while I agree with it, Ash's reload speed, there were kind of all these buffs to DPS to try to make them viable against tanks, and now like we have to bring them all back down to earth a little bit now.
That's possible, but I would actually argue that the McCree change was to bring him a little bit closer to Hanzo in terms of viability, because I think Hanzo in most situations was just better. And I think giving him a slight fire rate increase gave him a bit of a chance in the tank damage category. But yeah, overall, I definitely agree with you. There are a lot of situations like that. I mean, Reaper's received, I think, 1 nerf and like 7 buffs, something like that. He had his orbs. They used to be little orbs on the ground. Don't forget. And then there were lifesteal, and then the lifesteal got buffed to 30, and then 50, and then his
40 now.
Got buffed. Yeah, they tweaked it down to 40, but they changed his TP. They changed his wraith form, so now it reloads, and you can cancel it when you want. Like, those were separate changes. So just a lot of buffs to him as the pace has increased, as the pace of the game has increased. But personally, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I've always been a fan of nerfs over buffs. What do you guys think?
I like nerfs as well, because especially with goats, you see a lot of characters getting buffed, a lot of damage characters, and it's brought about a lot of damage creep in the game. Like Reaper does just silly amounts of damage and gets a lot of health back, and it makes the game move a lot faster, because people like think the time to kill, I saw a video, it was like a quarter of what it was when the game was released or something.
Yeah.
And I actually preferred it when it was slower, not like season 1 slow, but like season, I don't know, 8 or 9 slow, because it was
right.
fairly well
like double
paced.
sniper dive kind of thing.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but it wasn't like so fast that like if you're in platinum, you can't possibly hope to achieve just the level of speed and intricacy that like higher level players can get.
Yeah,
like,
and certain comps
8
like that
and 9.
require exactly.
You can like dive fairly well and like kind of speed through it, but still you had some sort of like resistance.
Right. Well, as the game, like I mentioned earlier, as the game's gone on, it's gotten a lot more fast paced. And you said the time to kill thing. If that's true, that's scary, but it sounds pretty accurate. But the difference between Overwatch in terms of viewability and castability, or whatever you want to call that, the ease of casting, the ease of viewership, and all that stuff. The difference between Overwatch and other games is it's consistent in terms of its pacing, whereas other game or more consistent in terms of its pacing, whereas almost every other popular esport that I can think of is very inconsistent. And I know that sounds bad. You're like, well, inconsistency is bad. Well, sort of. But in Overwatch, it's extremely fast paced for like 80% of the time. And then 20% of the time, it's slightly less extremely fast paced. But in like Dota, for example, you have these crazy fast team fights that hype the energy and everybody gets super excited. The casters can be rap gods. And then 10 or 15 seconds later, it slows down. We can talk about what just happened, go over it, make sure everybody understands, there's no confusion. Then you have another 5 minutes before that happens again. But in Overwatch, you just bang these team fights out over and over again.
Yeah.
And because there's less gaps in between team fights in Overwatch, I think slowing the pace down a lot would kind of balance that out for viewers.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, casting Overwatch is so hard. Like,
Oh, yeah.
really.
If you watch the casters, except for Uber and Mr. X, they kind of have a hard time just keeping up with, like, keeping it interesting for the audience and also, like, keeping it relevant to, like, what's happening.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, within one team fight, the last 10 or 15 seconds, by the end, they'll be 5 seconds behind in terms of the kill feed. Like,
Semler and Hex are, like, half an hour behind, but that's...
It's okay.
yeah,
They're making jokes about
it's
t-shirts.
fine. They're funny. They make up for it with humor.
right. Well, I mean, their whole design is for the entry viewer. Like, that's why they're always on ESPN. People are like, why are they on ESPN? They're the worst casters. No, they're not. They're just for
Which
different
is why
things.
Semler's also cute and clean shaven this season, instead of weird and hairy. He's appealing to the middle-aged white man.
What's
I think
wrong
he's
with
just
being weird and
evolved.
hairy?
I think he's just
So many
evolved as a
things.
man. I mean, he lives out of his van.
He
and
went
goes-
back to
goes climbing every week, so
He used to look like that.
Hey, what's
back
wrong
then.
with going climbing every week?
nothing. I'm just saying he's evolved as a human.
Pops, they're shitting on us.
I
All right,
know.
it's a 2v2 podcast now.
All right.
Oh God. What do you think about Sigma though? You never really gave.
I was
Oh,
just
did I?
waiting for that.
He doesn't want to leak scrim results, dude.
Sorry.
But leak scrim results.
Oh yeah, I remember where I was. I have a strange ability to make like 1,000 tangents at once in any conversation.
Sorry, we all do. That's
is
what
how our
podcasts are
podcast
for.
I guess that
every week.
I guess that's fair. But I think my point was basically that every character that comes out since release has had all these new potentials that people are seeing, the creativity, and then it hits live and there's just not anything there. I think it's the same with Sigma. He has a lot of cool utility, he has a lot of cool new stuff, but I just don't see him dethroning a lot of the meta characters right now. But I say that without having seen much on PTR. So
I was gonna say his
I'm
shield
thinking-
and his primary fire are pretty utility wise, like pretty useful, and with synergy
Utilitarians?
with other, I don't know what the word is. I fucking lost it. Like especially with synergy with Ryan, I've seen a lot, and Orisa. He's good as like an off tankish, like main-ish tank. He's a really flexy tank. He can switch back and forth.
yeah,
I mean,
there are tank duos in Overwatch. When the game was released, there's Ryan, Zarya, Winston, Diva, and then Hog was kind of in flux, and so they threw him in, and
No,
then
they just
he
had him
wasn't.
as their tank. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true as well. But then Orisa comes out to complement Hog, and now you have Wrecking Ball, who's kind of this weird, flexible. We don't know what he is, and now Sigma kind of plays into that as well, kind of a in the middle tank.
And I think there's something interesting about the fact that while we may not see Sigma as like the staple of one specific like tank duo, right? Like I don't know if we'll see something that it's like, we'll have like Sigma and Zarya, right? And like if you see Sigma, that means you see Zarya. But I think there's some really interesting potential for being used in different ways situationally. Like I think being able to run like Sigma and Ryan can provide a lot of like sustained pressure on point, potentially on like defense or something like that, right? So if you're on like King's Row first, and you want to be able to hold out a really long time on first or on streets, I think there's potential there, and like Zolt has some utility outside of that. But then also you can run kind of a more aggressive, like more damage-based composition when you do slot him in with something like Zarya. So I don't know how good he'll be at any of them, but I like that flexibility where we see him in kind of, we could potentially see him in different roles, as opposed to like, okay, you see Rein is your big shield daddy, and like that's the only way we ever see Reinhardt get used.
That's true.
So not that I don't like that.
Right. I think I'll make a because I remember you mentioned I have fire opinions or whatever you said.
Yeah, let's argue. Let's go.
No. I mean, you can try to argue with me if you want, but I think it'll be pretty hard. I'm confident, man. If there is not a large meta change in terms of what we're seeing right now, I think we will see more Torbjorn than Reinhardt or Sigma in playoffs and play-ins.
Why? Wait. Why?
Because I think he will basically have both of them will basically have a 0% pick rate.
No, but why do you think Torb?
Because I think Torb is more viable. He's just more situational. Reinhardt is universally not viable right now in almost any situation, and I don't see Sigma filling in any holes that exist in tanks right now.
The one combo that I'm starting to like more and more is the Sigma Zarya combo, just from the standpoint of Sigma, without having the shield in front of him and his lack of any real armor. Like that man is a damage sponge. So if you have a decent Zarya with it, you can still pull off the bubble plays that you could with Ryan, but there's a little bit more utility. I think my biggest problem with Sigma as a character and a design is the fact that all they did for his ult was be like, all right, see the seismic slam that Hammond has? We're just going to tune that up just a little bit, and boom, you have a new ult. I was a little disappointed with the creativity of that.
Yeah, I mean, on that same track, we mentioned the Symmetra ability was ripped off. So, and then yeah, it's basically Grav plus seismic slam in a way. So his ult, and then he has Zen orbs. I don't know. I think if you go far enough, you can say that abilities are from other abilities in the game, though.
As FLM mentions in chat, he feels good at a little bit of everything, but not really great at anything.
Yep.
Which again is kind of how a lot of people felt about Hammond at first. It really has taken. When did Hammond come out? Like 3, 4, or 5 months ago, beginning of the year.
Hammond came out before Ashe, I believe.
Okay.
So I think it was Hammond.
Like late 2018, right?
It was Hammond, and then Ashe, and then Batiste, I believe.
So he was like September.
Yeah, so it's really just taken into the last 2 or 3 months before people have really gotten the hang of Hammond and really been able to work comps around him and get the mechanical skill required to play Hammond. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of a learning curve for Sigma, but I can't think of where he would slot in right now, other than to tilt support players who are trying to keep him alive.
I mean, Statious, I'll ask you this much. How much do you think we'll be seeing Ball in the upcoming meta in 222?
In what situations would you have a Ball over Winston D.Va?
I'm asking you.
No, what do
You're
you
the one that's supposed to know these things.
Okay, fine.
You'll
see him a little bit with D.Va in place of Winston in certain.
I was gonna say, like, in some situations he has like higher damage output and survivability than Winston does.
Yeah, he has both.
Yeah, I mean, some situations it's gonna be better to have the cleave, but
it's just Primal is really good, Bubble is really good, and synergizing with the supports in the game is really good. Ball doesn't synergize with Tracer or Sombra or dive characters like Winston does. There's just something intrinsic about it. I don't know.
I feel like he really synergizes with Widow, in that Slam
knocks people
makes
up.
like the stun lock that is not far from what people complain about with Doomfist, and I wonder if we'll see that go away at some point as well.
I don't think so. It's fairly integral to how he works as a character.
Yeah,
like if you take that away, then you kind of just take away the whole show for Hammond.
I mean, I'm okay with them being launched, but I wish it didn't lock you into place like Uppercut used to.
Oh, they'll probably.
You know.
They'll change that.
Because I think if we ever see a point where you see Orisa, or excuse me, not Orisa, if you ever see Hammond and Widow get run a lot in tandem in like Overwatch League, and it's like, it's kind of like how like like Halt Hook goes, where it's just kind of like at the very beginning. Now there's counterplay to it with the Mei, but like at the very beginning, it was just like, well, that person got halted, they're dead now, right? With Hook.
Yeah.
And I think if we ever see something where it's like Ball Widow works the same way, which is like Ball slams, Widow kills them, like that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. I think that we might see that change.
That's true.
Quickly, so.
That's a good point. Sigma.
So yeah, boom. There's your leaks for if you want to run things.
It's all beautiful.
I'm helping.
I don't want to hear any shit talk.
I mean, that's a similar strat if you can't get if you're not in range for a pull, like the Orisa will go for help the snipers out, something like that. Give them an easier Widow duel. I think Sigma. I mean, if we think about what the next hero after Sigma would be, they're probably not going to add another DPS, right? There's no way.
It'll be a support.
I think it's gonna
It should be a tank, man. It really should.
One of
It should be a tank that works with Rhine.
The devs said that the guy who did the art for Sigma did an interview where he talked about how he did the art for the next 3 characters, and one of them was a tank, and one was a support, and one was a DPS. And he explicitly said that.
Yeah. So I think somebody talked about at some point. I don't remember if it was Jeff or not, but before they did 222, he had talked about how there was like twice the number of DPS as there were tanks and supports, and one of the things that was in their long-term vision was to try to get those numbers more even. So I think we'll probably see something for the next year or two where it'll be like, for every 1 DPS, we'll probably get like 2 tanks and 2 supports, or like 2 and 1, and back and forth like that.
Right.
So I'd expect a tank or a support next, and then maybe a DPS, and then the other one, and then just roll with that.
That's possible. That's possible. I'd like to see another flight-based character in the game.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. I mean, Pharah's the only one.
Yeah.
Swell character.
Pharah's the only one that doesn't have to touch the ground. So I think one more, and I know they really want to avoid those characters because for console, I remember hearing how rough Pharah is to play against, and adding more things in the air people have to look up. Things like that could be a struggle, but
you know the one character I want to see, and I want to see how they can pull this off, is the assassin character from the archive event. You know, the one that has the big blades that can climb on the walls. That screeches.
Genji?
No, I mean, but it'd be like, imagine, but instead of throwing shurikens, like you're actually a melee DPS.
Like a swordsman.
Yeah, give us more melee characters.
Like a swordsman type of thing.
You want a Genji and Doom mix.
Basically.
Without the
Prize
stun.
and support main.
I think they've gotten as far as they will in that direction for now.
Yeah,
but
I
we may see something more similar to an infiltration type character, but with more assassination abilities as opposed to denial abilities, like a Sombra Genji mix as opposed to like a Doom Genji mix. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that
Like
makes sense because
TF2.
I think them having the entire mechanic of Sombra going invisibility to only be used one time, I think is probably not going to happen just based on Blizzard's entire development strategy for every one of their games.
Right.
So I could see an assassin, or I could see some sort of archetype build off of that to make it work really cool, which I think would be cool. I mean, we definitely don't need another sniper in the game.
I disagree. We need more snipers.
Nope.
It'd be cool to have a sniper that was like longer range than Widow. You know?
But why would you need a longer? Like the sightlines are so short in this game.
Well, just make it longer.
Yeah, just make one map like triple the length.
Well, I mean, Havana's already got us going. Why not go even
exactly.
farther? Havana, Junkrat, or Junkertown, I mean?
There's
Perfect.
Suck a nut.
there's no map that feels longer than an overtime on Havana.
There's no map that feels longer than
There might
overtime
not
on
be.
First point Junkertown.
At least first on Junkertown, you feel a little bit closer because you're not really using all of the maximum sight lines. But on Havana, it's like
Havana last point is
yeah, Havana third, the far defender spawn to the attacker spawn is there's only one piece of map geometry in the way of that sight line, and I think that's the longest angle in the game as far as I can remember.
I think the longest one is the Gibraltar second point. I guess not
from
for
the top
Snickers,
of
for
Spaceship.
Farah. For Farah, it's the longest.
Mm.
Maybe Eichenwald from like the back of second point, from one side of second point to the
To
other
the
side.
far door of
Yeah,
third.
it works differently for
Really?
projectile, right? It's not the same as it is for.
Well, I'm thinking like Widow now, because like from the castle over first point to the
Yeah,
back.
yeah. It's probably Iker. It's probably Iker Havana.
I know that Eichenwald is the longest run for a payload map is second point. It's like 112 meters or something.
Yeah, I think Havana is actually shorter because second point is deceptively short.
But I
I
think the
Blizzard
problem going back to a flying hero is
Oh, yeah.
like half of it is like, yeah, how do you not make it be a menace to console and to lower ranks, but also how do you make it a character that plays well into hit scan players at a high level, right? Because I feel like playing Pharah into Widow in like GM or top 500 or Overwatch League, you either have to be a nut or you're like spending the whole time hiding from Widow, or you need to have the scouting on the Widow, right? And I think that's a cool dynamic, but it's incredibly hard to be balanced on both sides of that. And I don't know how they would make like a new character that handles that well and balances in both those ways.
Mm-hmm. It's never really. I'm not. I don't want to like diss you or something like that, but that's like a competitive player's perspective. That's like a somebody who focuses on playing like ladder. That's like a perspective that they would have, because you're thinking about the direct matchup. Like somebody swaps Widow, you have to swap off Farah. But in team play and in Owl and things like that, it's very rarely about one direct matchup like that. It's about the supporting cast of 5 other players, or
Sure.
with Pharmacy 4 other players on the team. And Shanghai played Farah almost. I think Ding only played Farah for stage 3 playoffs. I think he didn't pick another hero, like not once. If I remember, he might have played Hanzo like one round or something like that. But and enemy teams ran goats. We had bunker against it. We had dive against it, and none of it ended up turning the tide. So I don't think it's ever really about just the Farah or just the Widow.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say it's just that. I think it's just like making that matchup not go too far one way or the other in any perspective. I don't know. Anyway.
No, I get what you mean. I think the character would probably be like a. I don't think you could make it a DPS. It would probably be.
So it'd have to be a supporter.
I was thinking
Flying
like a
tank?
flex tank. It would be
Yeah.
like some sort of
One with an
Sort of
alternative
flex tank.
defense matrix.
with like a big. I was thinking something that like floats with a big like bubble around it. I don't know, like not a huge bubble, but like a small Winston bubble, like a very small version. Like those hamster balls that people roll around in, the like inflatable
like
ones.
The ones in Fortnite, the bounce.
Yeah.
Is that in Fortnite?
There's hamster
I
balls
stay
in
away
Fortnite.
from that game.
Wait. Can we get a skin for Hammond where Hammond is inside and it's just like a big ball?
A crystal,
my
yeah.
So when
That
he
would
like
be
runs through
so
people, it's just a
broken
little
in-game,
hamster
but
on the
that would be
ball. Oh my
amazing.
god.
That would be amazing.
That would.
All right, I'm calling Jeff. We're gonna
All
make
right.
it happen.
All right.
Oh my dad.
So we're hitting the part of the night where we about wrap it up, but I do have one more question for you.
Done. Okay.
If you could delete one character,
Oh golly.
not Brig,
Has
who
that
would it
already
be?
been answered?
I mean, why would you delete Brig at this point?
I'm just saying,
right now.
Brig and Samba are the two default quick, easy answers. As chat is spamming Sombra, but what would you do?
I do see Sombra. So my default answer would be Sombra, but I'll give a better answer than Sombra. But my default answer would be Sombra because I don't think there are enough characters yet to she's the only character that does what she does because there's such a small cast. And so I think that's one of the reasons it feels so unfun to play against her a lot of times, is because there's not much counterplay. But if I were to delete a character, I would, like, for the most positive change in the game or just the most change in general?
Whatever you want.
Both answers.
Okay. The most change in the game in general, I would delete Widow.
Yep.
I think that would have the most, because I think she's the only character besides Hanzo I think Ash has damage fall off, right? If I remember correctly.
Like,
Only
I
on our
believe so.
primary fire
very
engine.
slight, but yes.
Really? Okay. Well, maybe Ash. I don't know. But Widow for that. And then probably the most positive change in the game, I would delete. I think it'd be Hanzo. I think Hanzo replaced almost every hit scan and a lot of the flex DPS in the game and took away a lot of variety when they added Storm Arrow and
Scatter.
yeah, and when they added his leap. I think they gave him too many options. He's, again, too versatile. He's high damage, high tank buster. He can long range, short range, good mobility. Like, he doesn't really is great. His ult is good, combos well. So I'd say I'd delete Hanzo to give more DPS some playtime.
I don't think the leap was a very good addition. I think the Storm Arrow is okay, but like with the leap,
it's just like a better McCree again. It's just a better roll.
Yeah.
Shorter cooldown than roll too.
Yeah,
It's like
three
utility creep to go along with the damage creep. You know.
Right. Yeah.
seconds.
I would definitely just want them to. If you were Jeff, I just want you to slow down the game a little bit. That would be great.
That is a very good take. Well, with that point, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Statious, do you have any projects or socials or anything that you would like to plug?
Sure. I stream incredibly. I'm consistently inconsistent, but that's just Statious, stat IOUS on Twitch. Twitter is the same with an underscore at the front. I just shitpost, so that's all that is. Working on some different teams right now, but the main focus is last minute. So had a rough run in trials, but we're looking to push through to contenders this coming open. Yeah, I think that's all I got. Actually.
All right, sounds good. Squid, got anything for us?
What's up? Follow me on Twitter at SquidOnTheBase. I don't stream because I'm on Scuffed Wireless this summer. It's almost over, guys. We only have a couple more weeks, and then I won't be garbage anymore
I can't
on
even
the pod.
hear you. You're so quiet.
Yay!
You're
This
good.
will be fixed soon. Also, Maple, plug our YouTube since I'm too quiet to plug it.
Well, we don't have a custom URL, but it's Backcat Productions, I think. Tweet it. It's
on
linked
Twitter.
Pinned tweet at the Backcat Pod. Also follow me at MapleStarOW. Stay cool, Europeans. Buy some air conditioners for shit's sake. Jesus. That's about it. That's all I got.
All right, and in a couple weeks, we will be having us a very special guest, Liz Lombardo, mom of Zachary, to talk about all things being a parent in esports. As a parent myself, I'm very interested. That should be a good topic. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to plug. It's been a great show. Thank you, Statious, for coming on. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And we will see you next Monday. Have a good one, guys.